Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about how to create variables in C, and I'm also going to talk about code commenting. So let's talk about code commenting first. So if you're in, if you come, if you had programming experience, then you should be familiar with code commenting and what that is. But if you don't know what that is, it's basically a way to, take notes in your code. Right, so like suppose I wanted to, elaborate to whoever's reading the code what this return zero means. Then in C, what I could do is just press two forward slashes, right? Just add two forward slashes and just say whatever message I want to say. So I could just say like, I don't know, returns zero, right? This message that I wrote wouldn't affect the code at all. That's just to clarify things to anybody that's looking at the code. And yeah, that's kind of what comments do. Is just take notes in your code. But yeah, if you come from any other programming language, in C you have to add two forward slashes, and this is kind of similar to a lot of other programming languages like Java, I think, C++, and yeah. But anyway, that's how to add comments in a nutshell. So with that out of the way, let's just talk about variables. So in order to declare, before I talk about how to declare variables, I should just tell you what a variable is. If you're new to this, a variable is basically something, an entity that just holds a value, right? So like in algebra, you just say that let x equals 5, or let y equals 10. So those are just examples of variables. And we can use these variables in coding to hold certain values that we want to use later, or that we want to modify or keep track of. So that's basically it. So in C, to create a variable, well, first you have to know what kind of variable you want to create, because there are actually a lot of different kind of variables. So I'll make a code comment with my two forward slashes and explain what all those, variable types are. So one variable type is an integer, which we just write as int for short. An integer is just a number, right? Like 0, 1, 2, 12, 14, minus 6, so includes negative numbers, that's an integer too. Has to be whole numbers though, right? Just follows from, it's the same definition as it is in math, if you're a math kind of person. So that's an integer. Float. Let's talk about floats. So floats are just, numbers, right? Both positive and negative, including zero. That also have a decimal component, like 3.14, 2.718. Uh, let's see what else, like 1.5, right? Those are all floats. Um, another data type is a double, which is basically a float, but it has more precision, right? So for example, in a float, maybe you could store only 3.1415, but in a double, you could store 3.14159.265, right? So I mean, what the amount of decimals I stated isn't true for, it probably isn't true for a float and a double, but the idea is the same, right? Float tends to hold less decimal, tends to have less precision than a double, right? And that just means float just tends to hold less decimal points than a double. And consequently, that means a double tends to take up more space than a float. So keep that in mind if you're trying to do some, trying to cut corners in terms of space in your program, or cut corners isn't the right word I'm looking for. It's actually optimize, right? So keep that in mind if you're trying to optimize stuff. Let's see what other variable types there are there. Another one is char, right? And that's just short for character. So it just, stores singular letters like A or B or C or um, ampersand, right? Single characters. So it's not like a string. It's not like hello, because that would be a string. A character char is just H or E or L or O, right? Only the letters, not an entire sequence of characters, not an entire string. So that's a character. So we talked about int, float, double, character. Interestingly enough, there's no such thing as bool. There's no boolean in C. At least not by default. If you only include the standard input output, there's no boolean. And if you don't know what that is, you're new to programming. That's basically just true false. So that's not included by default in C. Another programming language is pretty sure that is included by default. But in C you can add it too. You just need to add an extra header. But you know, we'll uh, we'll talk about that later. And quite frankly, a lot of times you can just go without using booleans in C. But yeah, so I think I've talked about enough data types right now. I'm probably missing a few, but these are enough to get you started. And let's see, let's talk about how to declare a variable, right? So to declare a variable, what you need to do is you just need to type in the data type of the variable you want to declare or create. And I want to create an integer right now, okay? So I'm gonna type in int, and yeah, int, and then the variable name. I'm gonna call it x, right? Int x. Just end the line. And what I've done is I've created an integer named x. But generally in C, what you want to do is that you want to assign a value to the variable at creation, because if you don't, then if you try to use the variable without initializing it, that's what we call assigning a variable at creation. We call it initializing. If we don't initialize it at the beginning, then if we try to use the variable later and we don't assign a value to it, or forget to assign a value to it, the variable can contain some garbage from memory, which is sometimes something you don't want. So we're going to initialize the variable or assign a value to it right at its beginning. And I'm going to say that my variable x is going to have a value of 5, right? So that's kind of it, really. That's it. We've created an integer called x, and we've assigned it to a value of 5, right? We have assigned it a value of 5, and that's how you create a variable. Now, if you want to print a variable, print a value of a variable, we're going to use the printf function, right? The printf function, and that just print formatted string. And we're going to type in our message. So the value of x is, all right, so this is our message, right? But we want to insert the value of our variable right here into the message. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in percent sign and then d. And this percent sign d indicates that the next argument, the value from the next argument, is going to be inserted here into the message, and then the entire message needs to be printed. So we're going to type in, or we're going to write the value of x is %d, and then our next argument will be x. And as I said, this %d will be replaced with the value of x, which is our next argument. And if we've done everything correctly, we should get the message. The value of x is 5. So let's check that out. See if I did this correctly. And look at that, the value of x is 5. So %d, that's how you insert an integer into your string that you want to print. If we typed in, if we create a float, right? Float x is equal to 5.23, right? Instead of %d, we would have actually %f, right? And by the way, the percent whatever is called a format specifier in C. So for a full table of format specifiers, you can just search this up on Google. I won't go through all of them here. I don't think I can name all of them off the top of my head, but really, the most basic format specifiers I'll talk about with these data types. So anyway, the value of x is %f, right? Where x is a float. We've changed x to a float, 5.23. This %f will insert the float value into our string, and if we run the code, we should get 5.23. Now here we have a bunch of zeros, a bunch of trailing zeros. So to get rid of that, we can we can modify this format specifier a little bit to specify how many decimals we want. So if we want to specify if we want to print out only 2 decimals, then we just type in 0.2, right? And that 2 just means print 2 decimals only. So we should be getting 5.23, yeah, because that's our that just only goes up to 2 decimals. So the rest of the zeros are just truncated. Now if we only want to print 1 decimal, to change this to 5.2, well, just type in 0.1 here, and yeah, you get 5.2. Important thing to note that C does not round like anything. So if you have 5.28 and you only want to display 1 decimal, it's not going to be 5.3. It's going to be 5.2. Or actually, oh, it rounded to 5.3. That's interesting. Because last time I tried this, it only went down to 5 point. It got truncated to 5.2. I'm actually surprised to see it got rounded to 5.3. That's something I learned just now. But I would say don't rely on it. That's weird because last time I tried this, it did not round up or down. 5.2745. Let's just see. Let's see if it rounds up to 5.275 when I only want 3 decimal places. Okay, interesting. So 3 decimal places, it does not round, right? It does not round to 5.275. So that's very interesting. So the behavior I discovered just now. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit. But basically, for the most part, yeah, that's just a basic introduction to variables and printing variables in C. I'll just, I'll do one more example with the character real quick, and then I think I'll end the video. So I'm going to change float x to char x, and instead of a number, I'm going to just have a letter, right? Just A. Or actually, I want to make it interesting. B, right? Capital B. That should spice things up. So printf, the value of x is now format specifier for a character is actually %C, right? So when I run the code, I should hopefully get B, unless I learn something new again. And look at that, we got B. So yeah, that's kind of it. I guess one more variable type you should know that I just remembered, that I remembered just now, is long. And long is just to store a real long number. And an even bigger variable type to store really big numbers is long. So, these are some of the basic variable types you'll encounter that you'll need most in C. But yeah, that's kind of it. How to declare a variable? Just variable type, name, and then the value. Assign a value in the beginning because that'll prevent garbage values from ending up in your variable if you use it without initializing. And usually the compiler should throw an error or at least a warning if you try to use a variable without initialization. But yeah, that should be it for this video. Talked about the basic variable types, how to declare a variable, how to print the value of a variable, format specifiers. And by the way, format for a full list of format specifiers, you can just search it up on Google, right? Yep, int %d short. Usually I've never seen really, but might want to look into that. Short %d, %f, %c, long double, etc. Bunch of format specifiers that you can use, and a bunch of ways you can modify the format specifiers too. But hopefully this should get you started on your journey to C, and I will see you in the next video. If I made a mistake or I'm missing something really important, feel free to put a correction down in the comments. I'll see you in the next video, whenever that is.